queen's belief. The alien queen sat upon her throne of silver and stone. Her crown glowed with cold blue light, and her eyes carried the weight of 1,000 victories. Around her, the grand hall was filled with soldiers, servants, and advisors. They stood in silence, waiting for her words, for the queen's voice was law, and her judgment was final. She spoke slowly, her tone sharp like a blade. "Humans," she said, almost spitting the word, "are nothing. They are weak, they are soft, they bleed easily, and they break even faster. They are not fit to rule, not fit to fight, not even fit to survive." The hall echoed with low laughter. Her generals nodded in agreement. To them, the humans were insects, creatures who had appeared late in the galaxy, with no great power, no grand fleets, no ancient wisdom. Compared to the Queen's empire, humans were shadows. But one advisor dared to step forward. His armor was cracked from old battles, his voice carried the weight of caution. "My queen," he began, "I have seen their fire. I have seen how they rise again after falling. They are not like others. They do not surrender. Perhaps they are more dangerous than they appear." The queen's eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then she laughed, sharp and cruel. "Dangerous? They are children playing with sticks. Do you think they can stand against my armies, against my fleets, against me?" The advisor bowed low, but his voice shook as he whispered, "I only warn, Majesty. Their will is strong." The queen dismissed him with a wave of her hand. To her, humans were not worth fear. They were not worth respect. They were a story to frighten children, nothing more. And yet, far from the throne, across the stars, rumors had begun to spread. Small human ships had won skirmishes at the edge of her empire. Villages under her control spoke of human bravery. Merchants carry whispers that humans fought like no other species, not with brute force, but with something else, something hidden. Still, the queen ignored it. She sat tall upon her throne, proud and cold. She believed her empire unshakable. She believed humans could never rise high enough to threaten her reign. But that night, when the grand hall was empty and the stars shone outside her crystal windows, the queen did not rest. She walked alone through the silent corridors, her footsteps echoing. Her thoughts, though she would never admit them, were restless. She remembered the advisor's warning. She remembered the way he had spoken, not with fear of humans as insects, but with fear of humans as equals. That thought made her pause. She shook her head, dismissing it again. No, it was impossible. Humans were too small, too weak. And yet, deep inside her, a shadow of doubt was born. The next morning, a messenger arrived in the throne room. His breathing was heavy, his armor cracked, his voice trembling. He knelt and cried out, "My queen, the humans. They have taken a border outpost. Our soldiers fought, but the humans did not fall back. They advanced. They fought with fire." The queen rose from her throne, her eyes sharp as daggers. The hall fell silent. She walked down the steps, her robes trailing like shadows behind her. She stood before the messenger and studied him carefully. "You mean to tell me," she said softly, "that weak humans defeated my soldiers?" The messenger swallowed hard. "Yes, Majesty, they fight differently. They use tricks, traps, and courage. They did not retreat even when they bled." The queen's lips curved into a thin smile, but her eyes were cold. She raised her hand and the hall held its breath. For a moment it seemed she might strike the messenger down. Instead, she spoke in a low, dangerous tone. "Then we shall see," she whispered. "If they dare to rise, I will crush them myself. I will show the galaxy that humans are nothing but dust." The hall erupted in cheers, her generals roaring in support. But the messenger did not cheer. He kept his head low, his heart heavy with the memory of human eyes burning with defiance. The queen returned to her throne. She leaned back, calm and confident once more. To her, the humans had only earned a swift end. But what she did not know, what none of her empire knew, was that this was only the beginning. The humans were coming, and soon, the queen's belief would be tested in ways she could never imagine. The challenge. The queen's empire stretched across 100 star systems. Her armies stood like mountains. Her fleets darkened the skies. To her, no enemy was strong enough to stand. She believed the humans would soon vanish like dust in a storm. But whispers kept coming. One evening, as the queen dined in her high chamber, a messenger arrived again. His face was pale, his uniform torn. He dropped to one knee. "My queen," he gasped, "the humans have taken another post. Our ships." They did not return. The queen's goblet froze in her hand. For a heartbeat, silence filled the chamber. Then she placed the goblet down and smiled coldly. Another post? Let them take it. They are mice stealing crumbs from a banquet table. When the lion wakes, they will scatter. Her generals laughed, pounding their fists against the table. But one young captain dared to speak. "Majesty," he said carefully, "they do not scatter. They do not run. They keep coming. We crush one group, another rises. It is as if they fight with something unseen." The queen's smile faded slightly. She rose, her tall figure casting a shadow over the hall. Her eyes burned like frozen fire. "Unseen. Do not tell me about shadows. Tell me how they die." The captain bowed, but his voice was unsteady. "That is the problem, my queen. They do not die easily. Even when they fall, the rest keep fighting. They do no retreat. They fight as if every step is their last, and they will not give it up." The hall went silent. The queen's fingers tightened around her scepter. Her voice, though calm, cut through the air like a blade. "Then I will send more. Double the fleets, triple the soldiers. I will bury them under fire until nothing remains." Her words thundered across the chamber, and the generals roared their approval. But in the corner, the old advisor who had once warned her spoke again. His voice was soft, but it carried weight. "My queen, forgive me. But strength alone may not end them. Humans fight with something else, something we cannot measure." The queen's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you telling me my empire is weak?" The old advisor shook his head quickly. "Never, Majesty. Your empire is the greatest. But perhaps humans are not weak either." For a moment, the queen stared at him. Then she waved her hand. Guards dragged the advisor away, his voice fading in the distance. The queen turned back to her court. "Let this be known. Humans are insects, and like insects, they will be crushed beneath my boot." The court cheered, but unease lingered in the air. Days later, the queen stood before a great crystal screen. A battle was unfolding far away on the edge of her empire. Her fleets had cornered the humans. Fire lit the stars, and metal burned in the void. The queen expected a swift victory, but the humans fought back. Their ships were small, their weapons weaker, but their movements were sharp, cunning. They darted in and out like blades of light. They sacrificed ships to shield one another. They turned wreckage into weapons, traps into victories. The queen's eyes narrowed. She leaned closer, watching the screen with growing intensity. "How?" she whispered to herself. "How do they fight like this?" Her generals shifted nervously behind her. One finally spoke. "His Majesty, this is what we meant. They fight as if death means nothing to them." The queen clenched her jaw. For the first time, she felt a flicker of unease, but she crushed it quickly, forcing her voice to remain cold. "They are desperate. Desperation is not strength. It is weakness painted with fire. Watch. They will fall soon enough." But they did not fall. The human ships tore through the blockade, leaving trails of flame behind them. A cheer erupted from their radios, a sound of voices shouting in unity. The queen could not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Defiance. Her fist slammed against the throne's armrest. "Enough," she shouted. "If they want a challenge, I will give them one." She turned to her war council. Her voice thundered. "Summon the Iron Legion. Prepare the Black Fleet. If humans believe they can stand against me, then I will come myself. I will face their leader on the battlefield and show the galaxy what becomes of those who defy a queen." Her generals bowed low, their voices shaking with a mix of fear and excitement. But deep inside, a seed of doubt had begun to grow. The queen would never admit it, not to her court, not to herself. But when she closed her eyes that night, she saw fire. Human fire. A fire that did not burn out, even when surrounded by darkness. She clenched her hands until her claws cut her palms. "No," she whispered to the empty room. "They are weak. They must be weak." Yet even as she spoke the words, her heart beat faster. For the first time in her reign, the queen was not certain. And far away, beyond the stars, the humans were already preparing for her arrival. The human defiance. The queen's fleet moved like a storm across the stars. Her ships were enormous, their black armor glowing with cruel fire. She believed this show of force would crush the humans before battle even began. Most enemies surrendered at the sight of her banners, but the humans did not. On a shattered moon at the edge of the warfront, the queen stood inside her command too, where tall windows revealed the battlefield below, where her soldiers marched like rivers of steel. She looked proud, confident, certain of her victory. Bring me their leader, she ordered. Let me see the human who dares to defy me. Her scouts searched, and soon they found him. The human commander was nothing like she expected. He did not wear shining armor or carry grand weapons. His clothes were worn, his face marked with scars, yet his eyes burned with a strange light, something stronger than fear, something even stronger than pain. The queen studied him across the distance. Through the crystal screens, she saw him standing before his soldiers. His voice carried across the airwaves, and though she did not understand every word, she understood the spirit behind them. Stand, fight, do not give up. For every step they take, we will take it back. For every brother who falls, another will rise. We are human, and we do not kneel. His soldiers shouted in reply. The sound was raw, fierce, like thunder. It was not the voice of slaves. It was not the voice of the broken. It was the voice of free people who refused to bow. The queen felt a strange chill run through her. Her generals whispered nervously. One turned to her and said, Majesty, perhaps we should strike now, before their spirit grows stronger. But the queen raised her hand, her lips curved in a cold smile. No, let them shout. Let them dream. When I crush them, the sound of their hope will echo across the galaxy as a warning. The battle began. Her armies advanced like waves of fire. Alien war machines thundered forward, casting shadows over the ground. But the humans did not scatter. They did not retreat. Instead, they moved with sharp precision, slipping between the cracks, striking where the queen least expected. A squad of humans charged her war beasts, not with fear, but with fire in their eye. They climbed the giant machines, planting explosives with bare hands, even as some fell to the ground. The machines burned, collapsing in flame, and still the humans pushed forward. The queen leaned forward on her throne, her eyes narrowing. They fight like they wish to die, she murmured. No, Majesty, her general corrected, trembling as he watched. They fight like they wish to live. For the first time, the queen's smile faded. On the ground, the human commander cut through her warriors with a blade in one hand and a rifle in the other. He was not the strongest. He was not the fastest. But every move he made carried purpose. He fought not just for himself, but for all behind him. One of her elite guards cornered him, towering twice his size, armored in steel. The queen expected the human to fall quickly. Instead, he raised his weapon, looked straight into the alien's eyes, and shouted words that carried even through the static of the screens. You can kill me, but you will never kill us. Then he struck, fast and brutal. The alien guard fell. The queen rose to her feet. For a long moment she said nothing. Her soldiers behind her shifted uneasily. Finally she spoke, her voice low and heavy. This is not weakness. Her generals bowed, unsure if they had heard her correctly. The battle raged on, and though her forces were greater, though her weapons were stronger, the humans would not stop. Their lines bent but did not break. Their spirit burned brighter with every loss. The queen felt something stir inside her chest, something she had not felt in years. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was something more dangerous. It was respect. But with respect came another feeling, fear. As the humans raised their flag over the broken ruins of her machines, the queen clenched her fists. Her heart burned with fury, but her mind whispered a truth she refused to speak aloud. Humans were not weak. They were something far more dangerous. The queen turned Soren from the window, her robes flowing like shadows. Summon the full legion, she commanded. I will not allow this defiance to spread. If humans wish for war, then I will give them a war that will break their spirit forever. Her words were strong, but as she walked back to her throne, her steps were heavier than before. Deep inside, she knew this battle had changed something, and though she would never admit it, she was no longer certain who would break first, her empire or the humans. The unexpected tactics. The queen's legions marched with thunder. She had sent more ships, more soldiers, and more weapons than ever before. This time, she promised herself, the humans would be crushed so completely that no one in the galaxy would ever dare to rise again. Her fleets burned across the stars, surrounding a small human stronghold on a barren world. The planet was nothing, dust, stone, and ruins. To the queen, it was a perfect graveyard. Trap them here, she ordered. Seal every path. Not one human will escape. Her generals obeyed, smiling with confidence. They believed the battle already won. After all, how could weak humans face the might of an empire? But when the attack began, something unexpected happened. The humans fought differently. Instead of meeting the Queen's armies head-on, they disappeared into the landscape. Small squads broke apart, moving like shadows through the ruins. They set traps in the ground, hidden wires and mines. They used the dust storms as cover, striking suddenly and then vanishing before her soldiers could react. Every step the Queen's army took forward became dangerous. Machines exploded from hidden charges. Supply lines were cut in the night. Even water tanks went missing, stolen by human hands. Her generals grew restless. One shouted in the command chamber, "Majesty, they are cowards. They do not face us directly. They run and hide like animals." But the Queen did not answer. She was watching closely, her sharp eyes fixed on the crystal screens. She could see the human commander again, moving swiftly among his soldiers. He was not hiding out of fear. He was leading with strategy. Every move had purpose. Every risk had meaning. And the Queen began to realize this was not cowardice. This was something else. It was cunning. That night, under the broken sky, one of her supply bases went silent. The Queen sent a scout to investigate. He returned hours later, pale and shaking. "My queen," he stammered. "The humans took it, not with numbers, but with tricks. They set fires to draw us out, then struck from behind. We never saw them coming." The Queen's jaw tightened. For the first time, her empire's soldiers were not just fighting humans. They were fearing them. Her generals demanded harsher orders. "Burn the ruins," one cried. "Poison the ground. Leave nothing for them to use." The Queen considered it, but something inside her made her pause. Destroying everything meant admitting the humans had forced her hand. She did not want to give them that power. Instead, she spoke coldly. "We will tighten the circle. Starve them out. If they wish to hide, let them choke on their silence." And so the Queen's army built a great wall of fire around the ruins. Day by day, they closed the noose tighter. But the humans did not break. They slipped through cracks, striking from angles no one expected. They stole food from guarded stores. They turned abandoned machines into weapons. Every time the Queen believed she had them trapped, they found another path. It was as if the humans could see weakness where her empire saw strength. One evening, as the Queen studied the battlefield, she saw something that froze her heart. A small squad of humans had broken through her lines, heading straight for her command tower. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they charged anyway, with fire in their eyes. The Queen's guards rushed to defend her. The clash shook the ground. For a moment, the Queen herself felt the danger of battle press close. Through the smoke, she caught sight of the human commander again. His face was bloodied, his uniform torn, but he still stood tall. His eyes locked on hers through the chaos, and for the first time in her reign, the Queen felt as if someone was looking at her not with fear, but with defiance. Her heart raced. She whispered to herself, "This is not how war is supposed to be." Her guards pushed the humans back, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. But the damage was done. The Queen had seen it. The humans were not just surviving. They were teaching her empire a new kind of war. As the night grew quiet again, the Queen sat in her throne room, her claws tapping against the armrest. She was restless. Her mind replayed the human's gaze, the courage in his eyes. Her generals entered, bowing deeply. "Majesty," one said, "our tactics do not work. We suggest full destruction. No mercy. End them now." The Queen rose slowly. Her tall figure cast a shadow across the room. Her voice was calm, but her words were heavy. "No, this is not just war anymore. This is a challenge." She turned her gaze to the stars, her eyes burning like fire. "And I will face it myself." The turning point. The Queen had always ruled from above. Her throne was high, her power unquestioned, her commands carried across worlds. But now, for the first time in centuries, she descended to the battlefield herself. Her flagship landed upon the broken planet with a roar of fire. Soldiers bowed low as she stepped down, her robes flowing, her crown gleaming with cruel light. Her presence alone made the ground feel heavy. The Queen wanted every human to see her. She wanted them to tremble at the sight of their enemy. She wanted her own soldiers to regain courage, but when she looked across the battlefield, she didn't see fear. She saw humans standing firm, their weapons in hand, their eyes filled with the same fire she had glimpsed before, and at the center of them stood the human commander. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with dust and blood, but he did not kneel. He looked at her directly, as if she were not a queen, but only another rival. The queen's chest tightened with a strange, sharp feeling. She raised her voice, carrying across the ruins like thunder. "Human, you stand before me, ruler of empires, breaker of kings. You should kneel now, and perhaps I will let your people live." The commander stepped forward, his soldiers rallying behind him. His voice was hoarse but steady. "No, we kneel to no queen. We fight for our homes, our children, our freedom. You can kill us, but you cannot break us." The queen froze. Around her, her generals shifted uneasily. They had never heard such words spoken without fear. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, with a wave of her hand, the queen gave the order. "Attack!" Her soldiers surged forward like a flood. Alien war beasts roared, machines thundered, and fire lit the battlefield. The queen stood at the front, her blade gleaming, her presence like a storm. But again, the humans did not scatter. They fought with everything they had: clever traps, sudden strikes, and fearless charges. They gave ground, but only to pull her forces into tighter corners. Every loss only made them fight harder. The queen herself clashed with the human commander. Their blades struck, sparks flying. She expected his arms to falter under her strength, but though he trembled, though his blood stained the dirt, he did not fall. He blocked again and again, his eyes never leaving hers. "You are strong," she hissed, "but not strong enough." "And you," he replied, his breath ragged, "are blind. You think strength is only in muscle, in weapons, in crowns, but strength, true strength, is in the heart." His words struck her harder than his blade. For the first time in countless years, the queen felt her confidence slip. Around them, the battle raged. Her soldiers pushed hard, yet the humans held. They fought side by side, protecting one another, lifting the wounded, never leaving anyone behind. The queen's warriors, trained in power and fear, could not understand such unity. The queen's general shouted to her, "Majesty, pull back, this is not the way." But she shook her head. Her pride burned hotter than ever. She wanted to prove her empire unbreakable. Then it happened. One of her war machines, mighty and towering, moved forward to crush the humans. But instead of retreating, a small group of them rushed toward it. They had no chance of survival, yet they climbed the machine, planting charges at its joints. The explosion tore through the sky. The machine collapsed, flames spilling across the ground. The humans who placed the bombs were gone, but their sacrifice saved their comrades. The queen's soldiers watched in shock as the survivors rose again, shouting with renewed fire, and the queen felt her heart race. She had never seen such defiance, such madness, such courage. Her blade trembled in her hand. The human commander, battered and bleeding, still stood before her. He raised his weapon high and cried, "We are not weak, we are human, and we will never bow." The words echoed across the battlefield, and even some of her own soldiers felt their hearts stir. For a breathless moment, it seemed the queen's empire had cracked. Not in weapons, not in walls, but in spirit. The queen's vision blurred. She stepped back, her chest heavy, her pride wounded. Was this the turning point? For the first time, the queen wondered if her empire's strength was enough. She turned her gaze to the commander and whispered to herself, "This man, this human, why does he not fall?" Her soldiers continued to fight, but the queen's heart was no longer steady. The seed of doubt planted long ago had now grown into something greater, and though she still stood tall, she knew the battle had changed. So had she. The final battle. The queen stood at the center of the battlefield, her crown glinting in the firelight, her blade dripping with blood. Around her, the land was torn apart. Smoke rose from the ruins. Broken machines lay scattered like bones, and the screams of war filled the air. This was no longer a skirmish. It was no longer a lesson. It was the final battle. The queen had called every legion, every war machine, every weapon of her empire. Her fleets blackened the skies, her armies covered the ground. She had sworn that this day would end the humans forever. Yet when she looked across the burning field, the humans still stood. The commander was there, wounded but unbroken, rallying his people with fire in his voice. His soldiers bled, but none abandoned the fight. Even the weak, the injured, the young, they all carried something, A blade, a rifle, a stone. It was madness. It was impossible. And yet, it was happening before her eyes. The Queen's generals pressed her for orders. Majesty, crush them now. Send the Black Fleet. Burn everything. But the Queen's mind was not calm. The humans should have fallen long ago, yet their spirit was like iron. She had mocked them as weak, but here, on this battlefield, weakness had no place. She lifted her blade and shouted, "Advance!" The ground shook as her forces charged. Massive war beasts roared, their claws striking the earth. Armored soldiers stormed forward, weapons blazing. The Black Fleet rained fire from the sky, turning stone into molten rivers. The humans were swallowed in flame. For a moment, the Queen believed it was done. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. But then, the humans rose again. Out of the smoke they came, ragged, bloodied, but unbroken. They moved with impossible courage, slipping through fire, striking at weak points, turning their own suffering into fuel for victory. A squad of them charged her beasts, climbing onto their backs, planting explosives. Another squad stormed through her lines, tearing apart supply caravans. Every death only gave them more strength. The Queen's soldiers began to falter. Their training was built on fear and obedience, but when they looked into human eyes, burning, relentless, unafraid, something inside them shook. "Majesty," one general stammered. "They are not stopping. It is as if they are endless." The Queen's voice was sharp. "No, they bleed. They die. Keep pushing." Yet even as she spoke, her heart pounded faster. The human commander faced her again. His body was broken, his blood painting the dust, but his eyes still glowed like fire. "You cannot win," she hissed at him, blade raised high. He staggered, but his voice carried strong. "You cannot understand. You fight for power. We fight for everything we love. That is why you will lose." Their blades clashed again, sparks flying into the night. Around them, chaos reigned, ships falling from the skies, war machines burning, soldiers screaming. The Queen struck with fury, each blow meant to kill, but the human met her with defiance. His arms trembled, but he held. His steps faltered, but he stood. Every strike was a message. We will not kneel. The Queen's pride wavered. She had never met such resistance. Every foe before had broken, begged, or surrendered. But here, against this human, her power felt smaller. For a moment, she saw not just an enemy, but a mirror. A leader who carried the weight of his people, who would die before giving up. It frightened her. Still, she fought harder, determined to end it. She raised her blade for the final strike. But before she could deliver it, a thunderous blast shook the ground. A group of humans had destroyed one of her Black Fleet ships, sending it crashing into the battlefield. Fire roared around them, swallowed by a foe, lowing soldiers on both sides. The Queen stumbled, nearly falling. Dust and flame blurred her vision, and through it, she saw the humans raising their banner again, shouting together with voices that shook the sky. It was not just defiance anymore. It was victory in spirit. Her soldiers froze. Some stepped back. For the first time in her reign, the Queen's army hesitated. The Queen clenched her fists. Rage and fear battled in her chest. She wanted to scream, to deny it, to crush them with her own hands. But her mind whispered a truth she could not silence. The humans would not stop. Even if she killed their leader, even if she burned their worlds, they would rise again. Because their strength was not in weapons, but in something deeper, something her empire did not have. As the fires raged, the Queen stood still, her crown glinting in the chaos. Her soldiers looked to her for orders, waiting, trembling. But for the first time, she had none. The Queen's realization, the battlefield lay in ruins. Smoke covered the sky, ash rained down like black snow, and broken machines lay scattered like the bones of giants. The screams of war had faded into silence, replaced by the crackle of distant fires. The Queen stood alone in the center of it all. Her crown was chipped, her robes torn, and her blade heavy in her hand. Around her, her once mighty army staggered in defeat. Soldiers who had never known fear now looked uncertain. Some even dropped their weapons, their eyes refusing to meet hers. And across the field, the humans still stood. They were broken, bloodied, and weary. Yet their flag flew high, its cloth scorched but unfallen. Their commander leaned on his weapon, his body trembling from wounds, but his voice rose strong enough to reach the Queen. "We are not weak," he shouted, his words echoing in the silence. "We are human, and as long as one of us stands, we will never kneel." The queen's chest tightened. For so long she had called them insects, weaklings, children with toys. But now, staring at their tattered figures, she saw something she had never understood. They were not strong because of their weapons. They were not strong because of their numbers. They were strong because they refused to break. The queen looked at her own soldiers, tall, armored, bred for war. They had strength in their bodies, but not in their hearts. When fear touched them, they faltered. When hope was gone, they surrendered. But the humans, even when crushed, even when dying, they rose again. The queen's blade lowered. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. This should not be possible. One of her generals limped forward, his armor cracked, his voice desperate. "Majesty, we can regroup. We can strike again. Give the order, and we will finish them." But the queen turned her gaze on him, her eyes sharper than steel. "Finish them? Can you not see? We struck with all our power, and still they stand. We poured fire upon them, and still they burn brighter. We did not break them. We revealed what they truly are." Her general fell silent, his head bowing low. None dared to speak again. The queen looked back at the human commander. Their eyes met across the broken field. His stare was not filled with hate, but with something heavier. It was the look of a man who had lost much but refused to let it be in vain. For a moment, she saw herself in him, a leader who carried the weight of countless lives, a leader who stood, even when the world turned to ash. The queen's hand trembled on her sword. She wanted to raise it, to prove her strength one last time. But deep inside, she knew the truth. If she struck him down, another human would rise. If she burned this army, another would take its place. Humans could not be ended, not by fire, not by fear. She dropped her blade. The sound of it striking the ground echoed louder than any explosion. Her soldiers gasped, stunned. Never before had their queen lowered her weapon. She raised her voice, steady but heavy. "This battle is over. My empire has learned a truth today. Humans are not weak." The silence across the battlefield deepened. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying her words into the ruins. Her soldiers looked at her in shock. The humans looked at her in disbelief. The queen stepped forward, her crown gleaming faintly through the smoke. She stopped only a few steps away from the human commander. For a moment, it seemed the world held its breath. Then she spoke, not as a ruler to a servant, but as one leader to another. "You fought with fire I have never seen. You bled, and still you rose. You lost, and still you defied. I came here to prove your weakness. But instead, I have seen your strength, and I cannot deny it." The commander, pale and wounded, met her gaze. He said nothing at first. Then, with a slow nod, he whispered, "Now you understand." The queen closed her eyes briefly. She did not weep, for a queen does not weep, but her heart felt heavier than ever before. She turned back to her soldiers, her voice sharp once again. "Leave the field. This war is done." No one argued. No one dared. As her armies pulled back, the queen cast one last look at the humans. They stood together, holding one another up, their banner waving against the smoke-filled sky. And for the first time in her long reign, the queen felt something new. It was not pride. It was not rage. It was respect. She whispered to herself, too softly for anyone else to hear. "They are dangerous, not because of power, but because of spirit. If they rise higher, even empires will fall before them." Her crown felt heavier on her head as she turned away. She had come to prove humans were nothing. Instead, she had discovered the greatest truth of all. Humans were everything her empire was not, and that truth would haunt her forever.